Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. The show is also known as PWD Allies Podcast. Check it out on your favorite app, wherever you find it best suited for you. There's lots of variety of where to check the show out, and I really encourage you to like, subscribe, and share the content. And if you want to donate or you want to be a sponsor, reach out to Neil or myself, and yeah, we just really appreciate all the feedback that we're getting on the show. Today, the show is actually going to be all about our new state-of-the-art computer system in British Columbia, Canada. And I'm broadcasting from Victoria, British Columbia, the capital of BC. And the legislature for the province is actually located right in, well, it's about maybe 15-minute bus ride down there from here. So it's not too far, maybe more in a hop, skip, and a jump for sure. But that's where all the policymakers make these decisions in BC, at the BC legislature, because that's where the state-of-the-art computer system was announced last year, June 21st of 2023. And it was supposed to generate out big payments. I mean,
Bigger
huge payments.
checks, bigger checks for people.
Bigger checks.
Yeah.
Bigger checks for people on a fixed income, seniors, people on disability assistance in the province of British Columbia. And that's what the computer system is supposed to do. It's supposed to generate big payments out, Neil.
Show me the money.
Yeah. And they say that by this year, well, now
Yeah.
we're in 2024, we're in July 15th of 2024. So just over a year ago. And I guess it takes a lot of time to build computers.
Well, we should say too that Jeff Leggett was supposed to be on today's show, and I had him on the title card. I had his picture and everything, and we kind of scrambled to change the title card, and I had to shoot everything again. The intro is different, and so that's kind of why I botched the intro right at the end there. But I should say, talking about computer issues, we had we had computer issues today too ourselves,
Yes, we
which
did.
is why we were a little bit late because I had an issue with my OBS. I had to run an update because it wouldn't detect your desktop audio, Brent. So
I was
um yeah, go ahead.
I was silent. It
That's right.
reminded me of those old movies way back in the early 1900s, where you would just see the picture, but you wouldn't hear the audio.
That's
Yeah,
the only way I can shut you up is to is to break your
yeah,
audio.
yeah, yeah.
What I was gonna say though is um when Sheila Malcolmson said last year that there's this state of the art computer system coming, and she basically said the way the computer systems are set up now, it's impossible to create these bigger checks. That was what she said, right?
Yep.
And it just kind of makes you laugh because you know um I don't know, she probably doesn't know this, and I mean I've shared a little bit before of what I've done in the past, and that I used to work for the provincial government from it was from 1995 to 2002. And I lost my job because that was in 2002. That was when Gordon Campbell did the slash and burn, and he basically closed a bunch of public service offices. So when I was working for the Ministry of Transportation and Highways, he just basically closed down the entire office. But what Sheila Malcolmson herself maybe doesn't realize is that when I started in 1995 and all the way up to year 2002, my biggest job in public service for the provincial government was as a database builder and a data analyst. So it was my job to build databases and to keep track of information. And
Mhm.
and I was doing it at a time when, admittedly, the database systems were kind of crude. They started out kind of crude. When you think about 1995,
Yeah.
there's basically I won't really bore people if they don't understand the technical speak, but there's basically two kinds of databases you can think of. One's called a flat file database, and one's called a relational database. And the difference between a flat file database and a relational database is a flat file is kind of similar to like a card index, or like think about a recipe card index where you have a whole bunch of recipes on cards, and you want to look for your recipes. So you have to kind of just flip through the cards and find the recipe you want. That's
Hmm.
kind of that's what you call a flat file, because you're just arbitrarily going through the cards yourself and trying to find the card you want, and
Hmm.
there's no real relational thing but that connects all the cards. You have to actually go and find your own card, right?
Hmm.
But if it's relational, it means that you have pockets of data that are connected to each other. So you can have a pocket of data here about ingredients, and then you can have another pocket of data talking about the cook time, and you can have another pocket of data saying preparation techniques, and all these different pockets of data that relate to a particular recipe, right?
Hmm.
And so that's what you call relational, was when you're connecting up different pockets of data together. And so when I first started creating these databases, that was a flat file. It was just the card files, and then it got and back when it was flat file, what I would do is I would actually cheat and create like kind of fake a relational database by copying and pasting two relational databases, basically copying two together,
Yeah.
and then connecting the same database together and creating an artificial connection between the two, so that I could connect, say, two searchable fields to say
Hmm.
connect this field to this field and create kind of a fake relate. It worked, but it was almost like a fake relational database
Oh,
based
wow.
on based on a flat file form, right? And anyway, my whole point of explaining all this is when the government says they don't have the technology to make these databases,
Mm.
I call BS, because I was making relational databases out of flat file databases. So if I can do that, if I can do that crap in 1985 when nobody else, well, like, they just kind of gave me to do it, because it's like nobody else wanted to do it. I'm not saying nobody else
Okay.
could do it, but nobody else wanted to do it, right?
Hmm.
And so I took this flat file database, copied it so I could create a fake relational database, and then when I actually moved over to legitimate relational databases where you're connecting data things together, then it gets kind of complicated. But what I have to say is, when they say things like let's go back to uh, the the bus pass. I mean, their excuse was, well, we destroyed the computer. The computer's destroyed.
Yeah.
There's no
It's been
way
dismantled. Yeah.
it's been dismantled. There's no way we can recreate this database.
Bigger,
And
stronger, better.
yeah, I just, it blows my mind, because you know what? Like, when I was building these relational databases, I would, like, the other thing too is, like, you have, like, I was the kind of the data expert in the office. So, and there's some really smart people in the office, of course, but they don't think with a in a data analyst point of view, whereas I
Yeah.
was. So I would ask them things like, well, what kind of reports do you want to see out of your database? Or what kind of data are you going to want to pull out of your database? And they would say, well, could you please add this field in? Or could you please add this searchable field in? And could you please add this? Could you please tweak this? And you know what? Like, I could do whatever they wanted. Like, I
Mhm.
could, if they wanted a field in, I could just put a field in, you know, and it was not hard. and like every
Well,
little,
that's
every,
what I learned
yeah,
back in college. I Lotus 1, 2, 3, and
yeah,
we played with fields and
yeah.
yeah, and basically just command lines, right? And yeah, it was very interesting. Like it's interesting when you're describing about building, the databases. Because way back, I remember way back in like the '90s, the same thing. I used to build computers. I basically self-taught myself a lot of that stuff, and then also in connection with computer shops that I used to deal with at the time, getting computer parts. And so I learned a lot. Built the machines right from scratch, like putting all the components in, like gutting it right out and building it right from scratch, putting in all the software, the DOS, and then of course then Windows. I mean that wasn't really a big thing back then, right? Like, but I thought, wow, that would be neat because I went to a computer shop and I thought, what is that? Well, that's called
Mhm.
That's Windows. What is Windows? I go, I have a window in my house. No, Brent, that's not the same thing. No, it's a software. And I go, I want that on my machine. Well, your machine can't handle it. It doesn't have enough RAM. Well, I want more RAM. And they said, well, it's not just the RAM, it's the CPU, the central processing unit. Okay, well, I want bigger, stronger, better. I want faster. Well, it's going to cost you more money. Well, what I did was I found a program that actually mimicked the Windows. And you
Right,
put it on there and it made it look like Windows 95. And it had
right.
all these drop down menus. And I thought, wow, I've got Windows on my machine now.
Yeah.
And it had all these little drop down ones where you just click on and sub menus. And it's the same thing. It was all categorized, right? And so
Mhm.
it was so easy to work with. I did programming on the DOS at the time, where I'd kind of go in and make command lines and start editing like batch files. And
Mhm.
so I would make my computer restart when I wasn't home. I'd have it dial out to certain places automatically because I had one of the modems there, state of the art ones, and I wanted something super duper in there. And yeah, I got one of those fax modems. It was a modem that actually had a fax machine, like fax built in with it.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah,
this was so cool.
yeah.
My mom, it just drove her bonkers because my machine would be making all this squealing sound. And she says, what was going on in your room? I was at work at the time. And I come back and she goes, your machine was making all these weird sounds. And it was like, that sounded like it was like dialing out or something. I
Well, yeah,
go,
I used to like the
yeah,
handshake. I used to like the
yeah,
handshake that,
yes,
the squeal of the handshake. It's like,
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it would dial out. It would send out batch files. I had it all programmed to
Hmm.
do that. I had it so sophisticated where I had a program where I could actually access my own computer from when I wasn't at home. I was at the library, and I was able to go in there and actually work on my computer from the library. Yeah, and that was kind of neat. Now I know a lot of the telecommunication companies now going fast forward to present date, they can do the same thing. They take over your computer and they can actually do a lot of work and like
Well, that's what I used to do for, after I finished my stint with as a public service employee in 2002. I eventually moved on to the Royal Bank of Canada, and I was a tech support for them for all of the branch staff and all across Canada. And if anybody in the branches had a problem with their computer, I would just remote into it. It didn't matter if they're based in Toronto or they're based in Saskatchewan or wherever they're based. I was in Vancouver, and I could just remote into their computer, fix whatever they needed to, and then get out again. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed that job a lot.
Mhm.
But again, you know, I kind of call BS when, because I mean, again, like I I finished as a public service employee in 2002, so that's you're almost going on like 25 years ago. And as I said, like if I could do that kind of relational database stuff 25 years ago, and the government is saying now, well, Genial, we can't add a field.
Mhm.
It's impossible to add a field. If somebody wants you to add a field, or like again for the bus pass, how
Yeah.
hard would it be to add a field that was like a check box, say, does this person want a bus pass, or have they paid for a bus pass? Check mark. Like that's one field, and
Right.
you're telling me you can't add one stupid little check box that says, you know, you've paid for a 40 to like a annual $45 bus pass. We can't do that. Sorry.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You
And
know?
it should just automatically be right there saying any PWD designated person with a disability in BC, and every other province should be doing the same thing, by the way.
Yeah.
But in BC, when I say by the way, meaning they should automatically have transportation. It's already paid for. I mean, our tax dollars pay for that transportation. There's a levy on hydro that actually is a transit levy. It's actually on there too. I mean, so
Yeah.
right away, there's no reason why people shouldn't have transportation. I mean, pick and choose. Well, you can have it or you don't have to have it. You want the money or go without transportation. It never was that way before. Seniors have a bus pass. I know I see the advertising
Yeah.
all the time when I'm on BC Transit. Yeah, right away. Yeah,
But
they have.
but but also too, it's like, well, you know, our computers are so old that they
Oh,
can't handle too many zeros on
oh,
checks.
yeah.
And I mean, we have Mary Red in chat, and she says that the government will probably help us in 2028.
Yeah,
And that's probably not too far off.
no, actually,
But yeah,
there's
I
no.
mean, it just feels like a lot of excuses. And again, like I'm not like the like a total like guru expert when it comes to data. Like again, like I've said before, the only reason I got into databases, uh, and I mean, actually, to be completely transparent and honest, like when I got brought on as a public service employee, they only really intended to use me for about a month. It was
Hmm.
honestly only going to be a very temporary thing. It's like, let's just bring this guy in. They took a total flyer on me. They said, well, we don't know anything about you. We'll take a total flyer on you. It's just to do a really quick little database. It's only going to take about a month, and after a month, well, see ya. And that was what it was going to be. And like 1 month, you know turns into 7 years because I kept
Yeah.
producing what they wanted, right?
Well,
But
that's what happened for myself. I worked for the Ministry of Advanced Education and Technology, and my job was to go through a library and resort all different volumes of books that were on audiobooks. There were audiobooks, there were regular readable books, but there were audiobooks for people with visual impairments, and also regular books for just for low vision. There
Mhm.
was books that were larger print. There was ones that had Braille on them for people that are blind or partially sighted, and they use Braille. I also had a database, just a very basic DOS database on it, but way back then. And
Mhm.
so I had to correspond it and log on and go on to that and actually work with the information that I had and actually input onto these little floppy disks that way back then, those good
Yeah.
old floppy disks. But then they had the hard disks. And so I had a dual drive. And so I was able to copy back and forth. And so I
Mhm.
learned a lot on that. Mine, same thing. Mine was supposed to be a temporary job, just for summer employment, strictly like full time, Monday to Friday, just for the summer. I did it for 2 summers in a row. I took a leave of absence from my current job in order to do that because I just couldn't be at two places at the same time. Then I was offered it to start to be like 6 months of the actual within the calendar year after the summer.
Mhm.
So I talked to at the time I was talking to my current employer, and I said, "Well, can I maybe take a little leave and like do certain days with you?" And they because the job wasn't Monday to Friday then; it was actually I was offered it, but only like for like 3 days, and then 2 days at my other job. Eventually, I was offered full time, so I started that, and then unfortunately, the job became obsolete. They said that the job was no longer needed anymore. Technology evolved, and
Yeah.
they were yeah. So I felt really sad for myself and for the actual my other colleague that was there.
Yeah.
because he taught me a lot about technology then, and well, being on like time management, about organization, and just even though I was my own boss in a sense,
Yeah.
I was left to like, this is what
Yeah.
you're doing, and don't bother if we're in board meetings. If you need something
Yeah.
emergency, fine, like
Well,
go
it was
right when you want.
it was the same thing with me too. It's an
Yeah,
interesting time. It was an interesting time because,
yeah.
like, again, we're going back to 1995 when
Hmm.
I first started there. It was that I started with the Ministry of Environment. I did 4.5 years there, and I did 2.5 years with the Ministry of Transportation,
Hmm.
and uh, and it was just a really interesting time because back then, really, like, computers were relatively new, right?
They were.
And nobody really wanted to bother with computers. It's like,
They were
I
huge too. They were big,
yeah,
giant.
and like
Too.
everybody's like, I don't really care to know this stuff, and it's like, just find somebody else to deal with it. Like, I could care less. That, I mean,
Hmm.
that was kind of the attitude. Like, seriously, that was kind of the attitude about computers. Like, nobody wanted to deal with them. Like, so when I was brought on, it's like, they didn't really even know, like, what was possible, kind of thing. And they're like, well, let's just get this guy Neil to try and see what he can do. And like, it was like I said, they took a flyer on me, and like, again, it's not like I was this huge expert on computers, but it's like I was willing to put the time in, even though I didn't know everything. Like, I admittedly didn't know everything. I was willing to put the time in to learn and figure out, especially also too. I have to say, like, of course, you have to learn the lingo of the job too. Like, you have to learn
Yeah.
about, depending on what kind of job section I was in, you have to learn about different wildlife species, or the different watersheds, and if you're in the water management, all that kind of lingo in the office of, like, if it was, like, if it was the environment office, or and then when it was traffic data, I had to learn everything about traffic data, like how to capture traffic volumes, and how to capture the length of the vehicle, and how to graph it properly, and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, but you don't know that until you're immersed in it, right?
Well,
And
yeah.
but again, like, I was really lucky because back then, again, not very many people like to deal with it. So they were willing to take flyers on people and say, well, I don't want to do it. You try it. And if you have luck with it, then, that's great. And it was just kind of the same thing. They kind of gave me free reign to kind of,
Mhm.
you figure it out. And if, and we'll kind of give you a long leash, and you can figure it out. And obviously, I like I said, I kept producing kind of the stuff they wanted, because it went from a 1 month thing to a 7 year thing. So, but I by no means uh, would call myself an expert. It was just something that I was willing to absorb on the job and
Mhm.
learn as I go. And
Well, and it's something that you develop more skills as you went on, like more
yeah,
passion for learning
yeah,
technology, and that's like same thing kind of goes for myself as I self-taught myself a lot that I know back then, and it's useful now, like of different things that are troubleshooting, and I like to troubleshoot to find out, okay, why is this not working, and um, like kind of when it comes to like programs stuff. Remember those discs, Neil? They had those discs where you could actually copy. They were writable
yeah,
discs.
yeah.
Yeah, and then of course I had two of those in my
I did too. I did
computer,
too, and that
and
was that was
you
considered
really,
like excess. If you had two drives, it was like,
yeah. Oh
whoa,
yeah,
you got
I
two of
know.
them?
Yeah, because I was at a
Yeah,
computer shop and I said, "What?" And they're
yeah,
like, "Yeah, these are writable discs. They're legal writable discs. You can go to
yeah,
Best Buy, you can go to Future Shop." And I'm like, "Oh," so I
yeah,
walked in and I had to make sure my OneDrive in my computer, I thought it was writable because that's what the computer shop told me. I
yeah,
bought that and I
yeah,
found out that it wasn't writable. After that, I'm like, "This is not working." So I blamed the. At first, I felt bad because I blamed the sales agent. I went back down to Future Shop. Well, I sold you these discs and they should be working. And there I go, well, the one says it's detected that it's writable and the other drive's not. Well, that's not our fault. I'm thinking, where did you get your computer? So the whole hornet's nest open. So I went there and like, oh, I don't remember selling you that. I go, yeah, well, I've got the invoice right here. It shows you. Oh, I put the wrong one in. Well, yeah, I'll have to leave it with me. It'll cost you $100 for me to swap it out. I go, you know what? How do I do that? That's when I learned. I said, how do I do that then? I said, here.
Yeah.
So they gave, basically the gentleman swapped the disc. They drive out, gave me the other drive, says, take it home. Otherwise, it's going to cost you $100. I'm like, I'm not paying you $100. That was a lot of money back then.
It was.
So
Yeah.
I went home and I did it, and I almost buggered it up because the little ribbon inside it was going, here's the machine's going. I guess got too close, and so I learned pretty close to figuring that out. Little tag there and tacked it in so it wouldn't go and rub on there on the spinning mechanism that they have on the drive there, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of neat because that's when I got, like I said, the fax, modem fax one, and
Yeah.
I got a really good deal because I got it as a bundle, so I
Yeah.
was able to.
And
Really,
I got myself a dot matrix printer when they were
yeah,
like
yeah,
hardly anybody had them, you
yeah. I don't.
know. And I got one. I was like, wow, this is
I
awesome.
had one of those inkjet printers too at the time
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, but
I
the first dot matrix were like amazing. Like all these
yeah,
little dots. Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was neat because back then it was the technology was starting to evolve, and it was interesting because you learned a lot from it. And so fast forward when I heard about this new state of the art computer system, oh, it's going to take time to build it. I thought, well, I used to work with this stuff many
Mhm.
decades ago, and I kept thinking about the bus pass when we had this meeting. Like Sonia and Jeff and myself, we had the meeting with Miss Malcolmson at the legislature, and I kept thinking of bus pass. So I thought, same thing. I thought, oh, yeah, this is copy and paste like those discs. I always remember those
Yeah.
copy discs ones where you could just copy like the program over to another one and then
Yeah.
done, like the
Yeah.
seniors done. Because for everybody listening to the audio right now, like once upon a time, what we're talking about the bus pass now, people with disabilities in BC had they called it a $45 a year bus pass. It was in place for, oh my gosh, like
A long
probably
time.
like the 1980s,
Hmm.
and it was always in place until 2016, and it became I think it became a political football of saying, hey, the government of the day, and I've actually got into the practice of not doing the blame game on political parties because it really doesn't get anywhere. It's
Yeah.
about working together and finding a solution of a policy change that actually benefits people right across the spectrum. It doesn't matter whatever political view that you have. Work together, find a basic standard of policies, and work from there. Yeah, we're never going to get things 100% correct on it, but we live
Mhm.
and learn from policies that can be really damaging to a person, hurtful. Like it causes a lot of hurt and anxiety, stress, PTSD. I mean, you name it. Policies that were written way back when. But when it came to a bus pass, like seriously,
Mhm.
I know that I really campaigned a lot, really hard on that. So did Sonia, actually. And there was another lady that Sonia and I, she were helping as an advocate. We really went hard on this bus pass. We we really went hard. We still remember the meeting. I think I showed you a picture, Neil, one time where we were
Yeah, you
sitting in the
did.
BC legislature with the then, at the time, then premier, before he became premier of British Columbia, and he didn't know at the time. His minister didn't know. We came in and I said, well, I'm really upset about this bus pass. What do you mean? I said, well, I said the government right now, the current government took it away. And they're like, we haven't heard anything. This, you must know something that we don't know. And you know what, amazing? They actually didn't know. Like there was,
Yeah.
but what I didn't know at the time was there was meetings going on behind the scenes, and he didn't know. He did not know at the time. He
Yeah.
hadn't been briefed on that information. So Sonia and I actually got to know before he did. And then all of a sudden he was talking to us, and here's John. Yes. Uh, yeah, we need to talk to you right now. Can you then we were having a meeting with him in his office, and he goes, can you just talk to the MLA, and her name is Michelle at the time. So we were talking to Michelle, and John stepped away, and he came back. Oh my gosh, you guys are right. I go, what? He goes, you guys are right. They did this. Oh my gosh, they should not have done this. And I'm like, did what? Well, their plan was to take away the bus pass, but exchange it where you can have it as an option of paying $52 a month. But they got rid of that administration fee. But here, you can pay 52. I go, why would they change it? Oh, well, because a handful, 5 or 6 people.
Literally
Yeah.
5 or 6 people.
Yeah,
It's
and
not even an exaggeration. It was literally
and that
5 or
was
6 people.
in a rural area of British Columbia. 5 or 6 people said that it was unfair that people in the urban area basically got a bus pass. Well, I mean, we've had a bus pass for decades, and then all of a sudden, 5, 6 people decided they want to change the whole system. So the minister at the time ran with it, went to the premier at the time, Christy Clark at the time, and I don't really like to name out names like that, but went to Christy Clark and the finance minister, and they both said, "Yeah, this is a great idea. Let's go with it."
Yeah.
So yeah, now we
Let's say that it was Michelle Stilwell was the acting minister at the time,
yes,
and she's gone on record saying it was her idea.
yeah,
She's
yeah.
actually gone on record saying it was fully my idea.
She
And
thought it was fairness and equity. She
so
thought,
and it's really puzzling because you think, well, okay,
yeah,
here's a person with a disability. Like, surely you can do better than that. Like breaking something that's benefiting 99.99% of the disabled population, and you're going to break it based on the input you've received from 5 or 6 people in the rural area.
Well,
It really did not make sense to me that she did that.
yeah, because the part that really just baffles me is that there was public outcry through the disability community, and not even just people with disabilities. I mean, their caregivers, doctors, nurses, other practitioners, family members. I mean, you name it. Their relatives. Everybody chimed in on it. Said, restore the bus pass. We advocated hard about it. Now we advocated to get it, reinstated, and still the government ignored all the public feedback about getting that bus pass put back in place, and just let people keep the $52 really. So what they did was they gave the bus pass as a $52 supplement, and they said, well, we give it back.
Well, even let's back up a tiny bit though. Like before we transition to the government that took over, the NDP.
Yeah.
When there was a public outcry on the BC Liberals at the time,
right.
when people were saying, "Are you kidding me? Like just put the bus pass back," and their response was, "What was it, Brent? Sorry, we cannot do it because the computer's been dismantled."
Yep, that was exactly.
We can't do it because the computer's been dismantled, and to that I call BS again.
Yep, exactly. And when I heard that, I was livid because right away I went over to Best Buy Mobile, and I was living in Nanaimo at the time, Nanaimo, British Columbia, and so I ran over to Best Buy Mobile. I went over and talked to the Geek Squad, they call them over there, and I was talking about a bus pass, and I was actually having a problem with I had one of the little what do they call them, stick drives. It wasn't working. It wasn't working on my computer. Well, the person said, "Well, it's not working on your computer." Well, because there's a problem with it. So he took it apart. Well, what he found was there was a bed bug that was actually was fried inside. It got inside the little mechanism that goes in the computer, and for some reason it got fried right inside of it.
A computer bug.
Yeah, a computer bug.
A little.
That's what he called it. That's what he called it. A computer bug. He says, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, definitely. That sucker is cooked." Yeah, you really fried that one. But we got a good laugh out of it at the time. I said, well, that brought back a lot of nightmares because, we had lived in a place that had bed bugs, and I guess somehow over time, I guess it got in there, and I just left it inside my computer. I must have put it in there, and it couldn't get out, so it got fried. Because that thing was pretty hot too, that little pen drive. But anyway, so long story short about the bus pass was, I said to them at Best Buy Mobile, how difficult is it to copy from disc to disc? I said, because I said, I used to work with that stuff all the time. He goes, Brent, who are you talking to here? I mean, this is Best Buy Mobile. We work with computers all the time. It's a game. It's a game that the government's playing. Trust me. I mean, my 4-year-old here plays with computers and outsmarts me on this one game that I play with. Really? Yeah. So yeah, it's just a shell game. That's all it is. I'm like, why would they do that? I said, I don't understand. Because obviously there must have been an alternative mode of. That's what I'm thinking. He says,
Yeah.
look into it. And then of course we've talked about this before on the show where yes, it was an ultimatum that was given to the current government from the previous government.
Yeah,
Saying,
because at that time, I've shared this before too, is there was the clawback going on, and it was the Single Mothers Alliance.
Yep.
Vivica Ellis, she was working for the Single Mothers Alliance at the time, and they took the they took the Social Development Ministry to court.
Mm-hmm.
And they won based on it was for parental supports for children, like for divorced parents. They were clawing that back.
Terrible.
And anyway, so the Single Mothers Alliance took the province to court and won. And so I got part of my survivor's pension was restored, but just the portion that supports my son. So it's like $230 or something, and and there's still like $500 of it is still clawed off, because as the parent that's supporting my son, I don't deserve any money. It's only my son that deserves his little portion. Anyway, so but when that was going on, the club or the bus pass fiasco was happening at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I was in really close communication with Sam Sullivan, actually.
Right.
And he actually was really good, because he actually said, just text me anytime you want. He gave me his direct cell number, his personal cell number, that I could just text him whatever I wanted. And he said, make sure that you that I if I'm not responding back to you about updates, reach out to me and I'll get back to you. So I would always set every few days, I'd say, well, how's it going, kind of thing, and he'd say, well, the higher ups aren't really telling me anything, and they've gone quiet, kind of thing.
Oh.
And all this kind of stuff, relating to the clawback, I should say, not the bus pass. But I could tell that he was getting a lot of heat from the internally in his own party of why are you doing this, Sam? Like, you're going to be costing us money by reversing this clawback. And anyway, through that, where I got part of it restored, I also asked him about the bus pass. I said, what's the deal with the bus pass? And he basically said that everybody in the party had a gun to their head. We talk about party whips. Like, party whips are a real thing. All these kind of internal games that are played within the party, like private conversations, it's a real thing. So it doesn't surprise me when John Horgan at the time said we had no idea.
Yeah.
Because Sam Sullivan himself told me, and he was part of the party. He was part of the inside circle, and he said none of us had any idea until basically the 11th hour, or what do you want to call it. It was just like thrown on people at the 11th hour, gun to your head, like, do this, vote on this, yes or no. And that was kind of what it was.
Yeah.
And so it's no surprise that kind of went on, right? Or that I should say that John Horgan and the NDP, the opposition party, had no idea, because there's all the secretive stuff that went on.
Yeah, and that goes on with a lot of the parties. Like there's a lot of the party whips that they'll keep it silent, and it's like they have to do votes on stuff. And sometimes in life, things that make sense are being fair, maybe are fair, and there's other times that things aren't fair. And I think that really stems down to also about the Canada Disability Benefit. And Jeff will be talking more when we have him on about that,
Yeah.
because there's a huge fallout right now with that. I mean, we'll just kind of branch a little bit about that. I mean, because it kind of stems with the state of the art computer system that BC is supposed to be rolling out, big payouts. And I think BC was actually hoping that the federal government was going to kick out that the historic payment for the Canada Disability Benefit to all the provinces, to all people with disabilities that are medically assessed and designated as a citizen in Canada with a disability, 1.5 million. And with that Canada Disability Benefit, I strongly believe that the provinces were actually waiting on that payment to come through. And that's why they didn't want to give anything in this BC budget this year. $0. I mean, people ask me, what? That makes no sense. One of my neighbors even asked me this morning, because I said, we're going to be talking about this on the show. And said, what do you mean they gave no money? I go, they gave no money in this year's budget. Why? Did the cost of living not go up? Of course it went up. And they goes, I'm just joking with you, Brent. I mean, I go, well, yeah, I mean, cost of living's gone up. Rents are skyrocket. I mean, everyone knows what all the crises that we're going through. I'm not going to do the blame game of what party didn't do something or the other party didn't do something. I mean, but there's so many crises going on. And why, like, it makes no sense why you didn't get a rate increase, because our rent went up. I mean, we got a rent increase, and my landlord keeps saying to me every so often, well, remind the government. I mean, you got a rent increase. Why didn't you get an increase by the government? Did cost of living go down? I go, no, it won't go down, Rent. Rents never will go back down to historic rates of, I said, well, I remember way back memory lane of, geez, rents like $380, $420, for a bachelor. One bedroom. You could not really find too many of them at 420, but I do remember 465 at a one bedroom.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. Like, and I thought, wow, that seemed kind of high at that time. And I was doing a paper route, but yeah, I mean, that goes now. If you look back, wow, that was been cheap, right?
Well, let's be
buying power was really good. Get more bang for your buck back then.
Yeah, and let's be fair though a little bit to Sheila Malcolmson, because again, if we back up the tape to about a year ago, that's when you and Jeff had your meeting with her.
Yeah,
was
June 21st
was roughly a year ago, right?
Yeah.
And back then she was talking about that she was having personal meetings with the federal government. And she says the federal government is talking about the market basket measure, the poverty level market basket measure. That's what they're targeting, is the poverty level of market basket measure. So for here in BC as an example, the market basket measure is roughly around 20 between 21 and $2,200, right?
It's a little bit higher now, but yes.
Okay, sure. But so let's just do some rough math and say, like, right now here in BC, if you get your full check as a single person, it's $1,500 a month, all in, right? And if you don't get the bus pass,
$1,483.50 if you don't get the bus pass. Without supplements added on.
Yeah. So if you were going to bring it up to the poverty level of let's say $2,200, that means you need an extra $700. So it makes sense then when Sheila Malcolmson says that she was talking to the federal government, when she was saying that they're targeting the market basket measure, that means that they were targeting a top up of an extra $700 to bring everybody from $1,500 a month up to $2,200 a month. So it was going to be a $700 bump, right?
Yeah.
That is what
And
she was expecting. That was what everybody in the
oh
whole
yeah,
disability community was expecting, was around a $700 bump.
yeah,
And
exactly. And that's what a
and
lot of the advocacy groups and people with disabilities, self advocates, all many, I mean, thousands of organizations, even two of our guests that we had on that were sitting on panels,
yeah.
they were, I mean, just beyond flabbergasted also because it was like egg in the face to them, like it was a gut punch.
Yeah, it
As
was Michael Prince and Neil Balanger, we
yeah,
should
and
say.
then as they described,
Two advisors to the
yeah,
federal
yeah,
minister.
and they described it as a huge gut punch, a huge failure on the federal government, and the federal government let down all the provinces, and that's why so people with disabilities now, they like, well, how come we didn't get a rate increase? Well, that is the reason, folks. That is the
Yeah,
reason.
that is the
That
reason.
they all
But
waited for the federal government. So, like, thank you,
yeah,
federal government. Like, now you're causing a lot of suffering for
right.
people with disabilities across Canada.
But so that's why I wanted to give Sheila Malcolmson a little bit of a benefit of the
Yeah,
doubt, because the rug was pulled under her feet too.
yeah,
Like she was not expecting that either.
well,
But
exactly.
having knowing what we know now, the ministry here in BC should really be stepping up and saying, you know what, like the rug was pulled, and
They should have a plan.
now that the rug is pulled, now that we know, like we should step up and do something now.
Well, that's
Now that we know the federal government's not going to do anything for a while, we got to step up and do something.
Well, as soon as and I heard there was nothing in the BC budget this year, my jaw dropped. I was like, really? Like nothing in there? Okay, so now we know that they were waiting on the federal government to come through that payment. They should have had a backup plan saying, okay, plan B. They always say, have a plan B. If something goes wrong, and they didn't have that plan B in place. Plan B should have been, okay, if the federal government doesn't do this, and I had a feeling that the federal government was going to bugger this up somehow. Somehow, I didn't know to the extent that only up to 25,000 people may get up to $6.66 a day. Now that's completely just I almost want to vomit when I hear that
Mhm.
because it's just sickening. Like up to and maybe the ones with the DTC may get that, but now with new regulations, which Jeff Leggett will be talking about on our show coming up, so I won't take all the wind away from the sail there on that
Yeah.
because you'll be getting into that. However, they say the provinces should have a backup plan and had saying, okay, if the federal government doesn't do this, we're going to give them an increase and also tie the rate to inflation. Like so,
Yeah,
at
for
least
sure.
put an amount in
For
there.
sure.
Like last year, in BC, 125 went to some people with disabilities, but not all. The ones in subsidized housing, they got $0. So I mean, wow, they got no money. In my view, they should have got money. They should have been evened right out across. Like, so what if some people got a little bit more and other people didn't? I mean, like,
Mhm.
are we pegging, government? Are we pegging disabled against disabled, like have and have nots? Like, we got to stop doing that. Like, it's not working.
Apparently they
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
Apparently
that's
they are.
old school, and even old school wasn't working properly.
Talking about old school, I don't know if you noticed that I'm
Oh
wearing
yeah,
my Atari shirt, right?
yes, I love
And
that show.
and and
Yeah,
uh, and as preparation for this show, we always talk a little bit before the show, and we were talking about the newfangled state of the art computer system, and I said,
yeah,
maybe the province should be rolling out the Tandy Vision 200. You remember the Tandy Visions from
yeah.
Radio Shack back in the day, in
Oh
the
yeah.
like I think it was like the very early 80s. They had the Tandy Vision 200.
I actually had that one. I had this one where it came out had a hard disk and a floppy disk, and the picture quality on it, like it was color, and they had a lot of them were all black and white. This one I had was
Yeah.
color, and I actually won that actual computer through the Rotary Club. Yeah, through the
Oh
Rotary
wow.
Club. Yeah, I
Wow.
was actually given one of those, and it was actually through a student excellence program. And so I was awarded that one. I was just so happy, and they put it in my classroom for me. Everyone's like, "What? Well, how come he has that?" And so that was like, it was good. And but then what the school was said, well, we don't want to have any favoritism, so we're going to take that computer and we're going to put you into a different room where you can now use that computer. I'm like, no, I don't want to go into a different room. I want to be with the rest
Mhm.
of my classmates. And
Yeah.
I felt it as segregation. And I mean, going forward, I look back at that, and it was called segregation, and I didn't
Yeah.
like that. And
Well,
and so when I look at as how the governments are saying have and have nots,
yeah.
I think back at past experience, lived experience of
Yeah.
growing up, going through high school, and not always having the proper supports. I was grateful because I had a representative from the CNIB who actually came to my school and helped me with large and basically enhanced print because I was not able to read on the overhead projectors onto the walls. Like it was just too tiny for me and
Mhm.
what they were putting out for the class. And so they would enlarge the stuff for me, but then I would get lost on the paper. Like it would be so like trying to put it under a machine. And I was just like, it's like, say you're using an iPad like I am right now. If imagine
Mhm.
having a square window, but having a big giant piece of paper and having it keep scrolling across, I'd be like losing track where I was. And so the school got frustrated too because they're like, well, you're losing track of where you are, you said. I go, yeah, like I want to be able to read just like everybody else. And I go, okay, so why don't we make it better for everybody in the class? And
Mhm.
so I came to an agreement. I said, okay. I said, what are your ideas? And I remember back and everyone was happy. So what they did was they enlarged it and they put it on the overhead on the
For
chalkboard.
everyone, yeah.
Everybody got to actually see it enlarged.
Yeah.
And I said, can you see that, Brent? And I was sitting in the back of the class. I can see it. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all inclusive. So I actually taught them because I said, well, if maybe make it bigger, I don't know. How do we do it? So I guess they must have had a meeting and they made it bigger. So I actually taught them something and it worked good for everybody else. And so
Yeah.
what I'm doing as advocacy going forward is that some people will they used to mock and say, "Oh wow, he's trying to tell people that this is best for everybody." Well, no, what I'm trying to tell you is kind of what we just finished talking about on the podcast is that sometimes there are party whips within, well, not sometimes there are party whips within each
Mhm.
party. You can't make everybody happy, but policies can be changed
Yeah.
to a basic standard. And so I think what's happening in that Canada Disability Benefit, there's been a lot of pushback, a lot of negative pushback against, and I'm not saying which party is right or wrong. There are MPs that are doing the best they can to try to get some kind of help out to people with disabilities. Um, we don't always know what goes on behind the scenes, everyone. Like when it comes to like an ultimatum, like we learned this as you listened to the podcast today. You learned about the bus pass. I didn't even know. We were advocating to get this going. I didn't know what was going on. It was basically saying like take it or leave it. We're going to
Mhm.
scrap the whole freaking program if you
Yeah.
don't do it. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what with the Canada Disability Benefit, I'm thinking the same thing happened with that, saying if you don't agree, take it started at $6.66 a day. They
Mhm.
went with the complete opposite of up to like say over $2,000 that was recommended per each individual. That was the recommendation. They went with up to $6.66 a day at $200 a month. So just think of $200 a month to only DTC recipients.
Mhm.
Okay. The other way, the recommendation was all PWD, regardless if they've been jumping through that DTC hoop, right? It would have went to every single person. So imagine
Yeah.
$200 versus $2,000. Now you wonder why people are outraged. And then they say, well, the NDP, federal NDP, they voted for this. They
Yeah.
voted for only $6.66 a day.
Yeah.
So I'm not making excuses. And I will not make excuses for any political party, but maybe just give people the benefit of the doubt here until
Yeah.
we can come to a conclusion of why. And I do want to know the reason of that too. Like, so I mean, I would invite any member from that party to come on as a guest and maybe explain to our listeners, like, um, because like right now, like, yeah, it's like targets throwing saying, why did you vote for them? Why would you vote for that little of amount?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of curious, but I think that's probably what happened. I think that there was a deal breaker going on, take it
Yeah.
or leave it.
Yeah.
Do I think that it's going to be enough going forward? Absolutely not. No, I agree, because Jeff's going to talk about it too. It's disgusting. Like, it should not be that low. People should be given the
Yeah,
standard.
we've been getting some feedback, or you've been getting some I'm not on Twitter anymore, but you've been getting some
Yeah,
feedback of like, why haven't we been talking about the regulations that have just, because the federal government's asking for more input now,
right.
and
The
you know
the input that
and
they already know.
yeah, that was my input back. I said, well, it's because the federal government already has all the input from the
Exactly.
first go around. So it's
Yeah.
like why are they asking for a whole other batch of input when they already know everything already? Or
I think it's a
they
delay.
should.
I think it's a delay tactic. That's what I
Yeah,
think. I think it's
yeah.
just a delay. It's a
I
bait
mean,
and
they
switch.
got all of this. They got all this input from the disability community, and they ignored every single last one of the recommendations. And now they're turning around and saying, "Give us more input, please." And
Mhm.
I'm sorry, but I think a
Yeah.
big portion of this disability community now is not really trusting that you're actually sincere when you're asking, like we're wanting more input. You
Well,
know?
then that's kind of leads to exactly what I was just saying. I think that's why, I don't blame the disability community for being very extremely untrustworthy against the politicians, or believing what they're saying. Like when it comes to like $6.66 a day, $200 max, to only up to 25,000 DTC recipients, and they call it working age disabled people. Working age, like, when as soon as I heard that terminology come out, I thought, okay, so it's only going to go to people that had worked. Well, I had
Yeah,
worked. I had worked
yeah,
all my life.
yeah,
I don't have a DTC. I worked all my life. So what? I don't get it. And
yeah.
when so it's like a slap in the face to me. But do
By the
I say,
time it gets rolled out, you and I won't even qualify because I'm already
no?
56.
Exactly. It'll come
Yeah,
out when we're actually seniors, and they'll say, "Well,
yeah.
there we go. We delivered on our promise."
Too bad, Brent. Too bad, Neil. You don't qualify anymore. Yeah,
Yeah, and they'll say, "Oh, by the way, you're actually not classified as a disabled person any longer. Yeah, but you get to have a senior's pension, but you're not disabled under the guidelines of government." Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and of course, and that comes with the age restriction. It should not be in place. It should go right across the board, like a GLBI, some kind of form of a GLBI. And I know Joseph, he's probably listening to us too. He'll be like, Brent, talk about GLBI. Joseph, come on to the show. We'll talk about
yeah.
it.
Sure.
Yeah, well,
We've come to the end of the show, and actually, just on time, right at the end,
yeah.
we have Dan, Toronto Dan, just popped in,
Hey, Dan,
and wouldn't you know it, Dan, you're going to crash the party because we're almost off the off the
almost off,
podcast.
almost off the
But
grid. But
but
Dan, I was explaining, Dan, I'm not sure if you actually heard any of what I was just mentioning, but there's a lot of people in the, like, no, I'll repeat this one segment again, and I'll just emphasize that it's nothing against any political party. I stay very unbiased, very neutral. I like to hear all different angles of different ideas, suggestions. Party whips, like I said before, they are within every party. They will tell the leaders, they will tell the MLAs, stay, basically toe the line of what the party wants you to do. Do I agree with all the different methods? No, I don't. And I'll make that very clear. I do not agree with all the different methods, simply because if it causes harm to disabled citizens of Canada, um, for their basic standard of living, if they don't have enough money for their housing, for all their basic needs, their food, their I mean anything like toiletries, you name it, medications, whatever it is, your disability supplies that you need. I mean, if you need a new scooter, get all of it rather than just half of it. I mean, you can have the wheels, but you can't have the
yeah.
platform. So I mean, so like things need to be evened out across the spectrum here. When it comes to voting on something that's lesser, like I said, I'm just kind of summarizing it all up for Dan. Um, I think that there must have been a reason behind that. And, so maybe they're looking at it as, well, that's a starting point. But of course, people have been suffering so bad since that original Canada Disability Benefit was originally launched back in 4 years ago, right? And that's why we're pushing for DERB right now to get some kind of a disability emergency response benefit out there. There's a petition out there right now. It's there's a few of them floating out there. There's a petition that you and I wrote there, Neil.
Yeah. Ours is E-5047. So if you just you can Google it, petition.
Yeah.
Just look up petition E-5047. If you just put that in Google, it'll come up on Google, and just click on the link and make sure you sign it. It's getting there.
It was 562
signatures. Yeah, so it's getting there, and so it's good, and so we'll make sure it gets heard.
Oh, sorry, I didn't say I say 562 now. That would be good. Sorry, I meant 262.
Yeah.
I meant, yeah, that would be
So
nice, because 500 is what it needs to be.
It's just over the halfway point now. So that's,
I can only wish it 562.
Yeah. Yeah. But we should say too, I was gonna put out a little bit of a teaser. On Thursday, we have Dan Davies coming on the show. It's his he was on last year. He came on last year, roughly around the same time. He came on last year, I think it was May of 2023. So he's coming on again. Yep. He's the critic for the social development ministry here in BC. He's the critic for it. And so I think what we're going to talk about is my favorite subject. It's going to be the PWD clawback and the pink unicorns. I mean, I think he's only going to be on for 20 minutes. What we should say too is it will be a pre-recorded segment. So we're actually going to be meeting with him early at our secret time. Nobody gets to know what our secret time is. We're going to be meeting with him earlier at our secret time, then record it, and then it's going to be released later in the day as a premiere segment on YouTube. And when it premieres on YouTube, it almost gets released as a live segment, but it's not live. But the chat is live. So again, the segment's pre-recorded, but the chat, you can join the chat, and the chat is live. The chat is going to be real time.
And you can comment the chat on what you're actually watching from this recording.
Yeah. So I think it's cool. I think I have it planned for, is it 2:00? I think it's 2:00 on Thursday. But yeah, again, that's a pre-recorded segment, but it's going to be released as a premiere event, and the chat itself will be live. So, and we'll make a point of mentioning that too somewhere in the recording at the beginning, that hey, this is a pre-recorded segment, just in case you don't know. But I'm looking forward to that one because of course pink unicorns are my favorite subject. And what I was also going to drop a teaser of Schrodinger's cat. That's something for people to look up, is Schrodinger's cat. If people aren't aware of Schrodinger's cat, I'm going to be talking about Schrodinger's cat on Dan's episode, and we'll actually see if Dan knows about Schrodinger's cat or not.
I want to advertise out, and I don't normally advertise out documentaries, but there's a documentary that I'd love to people to check it out. And this goes back. I mean, this is about the housing market, what had happened. I mean, the high prices of housing. But check out this documentary because when there's a downfall, people are hurting. They suffer, they hurt. I mean, and I don't want to emphasize that, but it's called The Big Short. Check out The Big Short because there's a lot of parallels of what's happening now. And that was in the U.S. though. The U.S. took a really bad brunt during the housing crisis back in 2008, like 2008 there. And they never really fully recovered 100% from that. Canada did have the spillover, not to the same degree back then. Now, with the housing prices right now, they are so high. And when I'm saying the housing prices, I mean in traditional like condominiums right now, traditional single dwelling like housing, like just a small house. I call them. I don't know what the terminology is, and I like to try to get one of the real estate agents to come on to the show and talk about more piling in on that, like why are things happening the way they are. But you're looking at rent prices. I mean, it doesn't matter where you look across Canada right now, Neil. I mean, they are outrageously high. There's no reason why a place built way back in the 1940s or it should be charging over $2,000 a month for for housing.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. It's just opportunity knocks.
Yeah.
And then again, like I and Sonia, we really want to move away from this area. Beautiful area, but we want to get something a little bit more up to date. And there's other reasons why we need to move out of this area, back to our hometown, right? Because that's where I grew up, and government always kept saying before people should be able to live and be in the community that they want to be in. Well, we want to be in, but we got priced out because again, you didn't listen to people with lived experience, right?
Yeah,
I explained that on the news hour. I explained it over and over and over. Again, I don't know what happened, but
and I mean, I always say that, in my case, again, the clawbacks, I say they are discriminatory, and I think they are. And I think I have a good case that they are.
oh,
But
they are.
but even if you say that they're not, even if you say that they're not, at bare minimum, you have to say that they're unfair. Like I've mentioned now quite a few times this idea that, imagine if McDonald's was only putting out hamburgers for 12% of the customers and then turning away like the other 88%. Well, that's exactly what BC Housing does.
Yeah.
BC Housing says, here's subsidized housing for 12% of you. And oh wow, we've run out now, so too bad. And the thing is though, it's always the same 12%. It's not like it's a randomized thing of like, it's not like like you can say, well, it's unfortunate if like, let's say you go to McDonald's and they have a problem with their ice cream machine and it's like busted and nobody can get their ice cream, and you can say, well, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate that happened, but it's kind of a one-off. But the thing about BC Housing is it's not a one-off. It's like the ones that are being targeted all the time consistently get targeted all the time and shit on, and the ones that are like I've said are the kind of the upper echelon that are getting that 12% housing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fine, but too bad about the other 80% that are always getting screwed, and that is why it's discriminatory. It's not just unfair. Then it becomes discriminatory because you're always targeting the exact same 88 to 90% of the population. It's always the exact same percentage, or the same group, the exact same group.
But the government looks at it as it's fair. They look at it as there's not a problem there. It comes down to, well, their choice.
It's just unfair. It's not discriminatory. Even though we're targeting the same people, it's not discriminatory.
Yeah, it's all about choice, right? It's all about the pink unicorns. I mean, it's we even it all out.
Anyway, I think we've rambled on a lot enough, Brent. We can sign off. I hope people enjoy the new intro.
Yeah.
It was a one-off intro. I'm not going to do the same one again. But
it's all about the state of the art, computer system and what really happens behind the scenes with governments. And I going forward, before we sign off, I just want people to understand that doesn't matter who you vote for, right? Focus on the policy. Who has your best interest when it comes to policy as a person with a disability? Ask these questions when the leaders come to your community across Canada. Well, ask them, what are you going to do if you get elected, and hold them accountable? What are you going to do? I want to know your plan. What are you going to do to lift people out of poverty up to a standard of living? Will you implement that in, or however you want to word it? But get your voice out there and make your voice be heard and say, if you do that, maybe you'll vote for them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you vote for who you want, but it comes down to they'll do the opposite, right? They'll say something just to get in, and then they do the opposite, and then we got a whole merry-go-round, right? So
Yeah.
there needs to be a standard in place.
And shout out again to Sheila Malcolmson. We're still waiting for the Tandy 200, the Tandy Vision 200.
We can do this.
New computer.
We can build it bigger, stronger, faster. And I used to play the Atari when I was a kid. I had all the consoles, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I know, Sheila, I know you can build this machine. It needs to be built this year before the election on October 19th.
If you build it, they will come.
They will come. They will.
The big checks will come if you build it. Yeah.
It will malfunction. I remember the former minister said there are other revenue streams that can get put out there. So
yeah,
but build a machine so we don't have to do the other revenue streams. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today.
Everyone.